Joining us again on Sports Talk ATL, Fox 5's Kelly Price, one of our favorites. Thank you so much for joining us in, Kelly.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
So we're switching gears on you. We talked a lot of Falcons. We've talked a lot of Braves. You say you're a jack of all trades, and we're going to talk about March Madness, and not just the men's March Madness, the women's March Madness as well, because as we saw, 12.3 million people watch that LSU and Iowa game. It was really a classic for the sport, in my opinion. But I want to start off by asking you, and just in general, covering both of these stories, does it not kind of feel that these tournaments have really, I feel like college basketball over the last couple of years, women's has always been on the rise, but I think the men's game kind of last year's tournament was a little boring. It seems like this year's tournament combined with the women's, it feels like college basketball has really found like something to stand on this year.
I agree. I mean, it's the drama, like all the things around before they even hit the basketball court for this LSU Iowa matchup. I mean, I was glued to that entire game. And then not even just that, but the game after that, UConn and USC was an excellent basketball game as well. And quite honestly, I'm going to be honest, and people can hate on this, but like I have not sat down and watched a full March Madness game on the men's side like I watched those two games back to back. Like, because there's been a lot of blowouts, there's been upsets, but not crazy. I mean, NC State's kind of like the Cinderella remaining on the men's side, but I just haven't gotten into the men's side as much as I have the women's side in this tournament this year. So for me, I was so glued to that entire night of basketball, and in a way that I wasn't ever tuned in like that for the men's side, which is the first time I've ever been able to say that. Like I have not watched from start to finish of every single game, on the men's side. And those two games were just so compelling. I was definitely one of those 12 million people. I mean, you see the stats that, there's been a lot of outlets reporting about, bigger than every NHL game, every MLB game, all these other, professional sports. They blew those numbers out of the water, which is really, really cool to see.
Yeah, super cool to see. I think what was most special about that, obviously, I was talking to Chase about it earlier, that Caitlin Clark is obviously the driving force in that, setting records, but you need two sides. You need a side to root for, root against. We're LSU guys. We were obviously rooting against Caitlin Clark, but the vast majority of the country was rooting against Angel Reese and Kim Mulkey and LSU. And I think what was most impressive about it was the hype that was built around it. Obviously, a rematch of last year's championship. Both teams on a collision course. It should have been a Final Four or a championship game, but I digress. It lived up to the hype and more. Like everybody was hyping it up, that LSU Iowa game, and they delivered. Caitlin Clark in particular. I kept looking at my girlfriend. I was watching it with her, and she looked at me in the same way. We were just like, she's just making everything. Like she's pulling up from 3/4 down the court. I mean, it was one of those, like Chase mentioned, I think at the beginning, it felt like it was an all-time classic right then and there.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about Caitlin Clark's game watching that game, I was just glued to every thing that she did because it wasn't just her shooting, but it's her passing is so elite. Her vision of the court is just really cool to watch, like beautiful basketball that you see being played out. I mean, if there's a couple times where she's lobbing it, and in the NBA, that's like a huge, ginormous dunk. There's so many cool passes and the way she sees the court, and also just when all the pressure is on her with defenses, she can distribute the ball all over the place. And that to me, even outside of the shooting, which is obviously insane and everyone has talked about, her vision is really cool to watch as well.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like she's playing, frankly, a different sport than the rest of the women.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I
true.
know. I know a lot of people, and I even said this yesterday, the talent is, there's a big discrepancy in the WNBA talent compared to the collegiate level. I know there's a lot of WNBA player that has even taken to Twitter saying, hey, they're not going to be worried about no Caitlin Clark. Well, I think things are going to change once she's in the league because she really does look like she's playing a different sport. And you're 100% correct on the fact that it's not just the shooting. Yes, the shooting is what catches eyes, and that's what's going to make all the clips, and that's what's going to win you ball games in a lot of ways. But there were passes down court, literally full court passes that you see from like Nikola Jokic, from like legitimate NBA passes where it's like, yeah, there's not a lot of girls making that play, and there's behind the back, there's dribbling, there's rebounding. She can literally do it all. So you're 100% right. It really isn't just the shooting. That's what's going to get all the clips. but it's everything about her game where it looks like she's playing a different sport than the rest.
Oh, definitely. I'm really interested to see how it all translates to the WNBA. Like, can they capitalize on this insane, and now with Angel Reese as well going to the WNBA, like, can they capitalize on all of this momentum that they've built at the college level and bring it to, that level? Can they sustain that success and that attention and all those eyes and interest in the sport, on the women's side? That's what I'm really interested to see. I hope they can, but it's going to be different. I mean, college sports just are different inherently because of, you play for the team on your chest more so than these pro athletes do. And, all the drama of like, okay, they've been going at it for, now 2 years of this like high level of playing for championships and stuff. So I'll be interested to see if they can translate all that drama, all that intrigue into the next level. I hope they can.
That's what I was telling Chase earlier. We talked about this exact same thing and how like they're not rivals traditionally,
Right.
so to speak, in the conference. They don't play in the same conference and things like that, but they have built up this rivalry, like you said, over the past 2 years. And the great sports rivalries, you don't really see them at any of the professional sports. There's a couple in the NFL, a couple in MLB, a couple in the NBA, but the old Lakers Celtics rivalries from the NBA, they're dead. NFL, most rivalries are dead. We still hate the Saints. The Saints still hate the Falcons. But I mean, since Matt Ryan and Drew Brees are gone, that's mostly dead. College sports rivalries transcend players, coaches. You just hate those guys. And this Iowa LSU, like I said to begin with, why it was so captivating was the story, the characters. It's not just the players. Kim Mulkey had a piece in that. I think that was just this was almost, it doesn't feel like once in a lifetime because I do believe it can happen again. But this was a special moment that I think a lot of people may take for granted and one day are going to look back and be like, that LSU Iowa, man, them going back and forth, especially if Iowa can go on and win a championship, Caitlin Clark can go and win a championship, it'll make that rivalry even bigger.
Right. No, you're totally right. And I hope it's something, again, like we are just talking about, sustained success and bringing it to the next level. Like, hopefully women's basketball at the college level, even though when Caitlin and Angel and, these personalities kind of leave the college level, hopefully they can sustain the success or kind of restock with different personalities and different rivalries that kind of captivate our entire attention.
Yeah, and you mentioned this talking about the sustained success going to the WNBA. I think we all realize that it's going to be a lot more difficult than just having some good players going to the WNBA because there's been good players. I mean, there's been Maya Moores, there's been Candace Parkers when I was a kid. There's been great players in the WNBA to come through the ranks, and they haven't been able to continue that success and draw really to the WNBA, which brings me to this question because I think this is something that, Angel Reese already made that answer. She says he's going to the WNBA. Sounds like the way Caitlin Clark is interviewing, she's going into the next phase of her life when she's done with this tournament. But is there something to be said, I mean, for these athletes, especially with NIL now? I mean, the bags that Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are getting are significantly bigger than what they're going to get in a wage from the WNBA. I mean, are you a little bit, I guess, surprised that there isn't, like, it was pretty instant from Angel Reese, and we're talking about a couple days later, and I think it's going to be pretty instant with Caitlin Clark. Are you a little bit surprised that there isn't like a little more consideration for them staying in college a little longer and just soaking this up as long as they can?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally different than a NFL or a college football, safety declaring for the NFL draft, right? Like, that guy's going to go get generational wealth if he gets drafted in the first round, just by getting drafted before he even sets foot on an NFL football field. So it's totally different. Obviously, the paychecks are very different in the WNBA, no matter where you get drafted or whatever. So yeah, I mean, to your point, I think that they might be making more money, at this level with all the NIL opportunities out there. And yeah, when you go to the WNBA, you can, go be the face of Nike or go get these big sponsorships. But what's stopping them from getting that right now? Nothing, because NIL allows them to do that. So, and obviously we've seen Caitlin Clark already in commercials during this March Madness phase. I forget which one, like Allstate or State Farm or something. She already has a sponsorship with them. That's pretty big. So yeah, I am a little surprised. Because you hear, football players talk about how, you don't want to get injured. You want to be able to capitalize on, where you can go in the draft. But it is totally different for these women. So it is a little surprising. But At least if they're both going out, they're both going out at the same time, right?
You could maybe carry on that rivalry. I mean, if I
Right.
was, in charge of, marketing or something of that,
Right.
news that in the WNBA, I would ride that because
Oh,
I feel like
100%.
Caitlin Clark, has kind of done what she's done. Many people consider her one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time at the college ranks. I think that she's past the point. Money is not on
Right.
her mind, and from where I sit, because like you said, she's already national commercials. She's already the face of women's college basketball. She's worried about legacy. And if I was in the WNBA's front office or wherever, I would be writing that duo as,
100%.
I mean, I'm not going to say something about fixing the lottery, but if you could get those two on some sort of rival teams, that would be a moneymaker. That would be a gold mine. And then start forcing it on ESPN. Like the women's tournament, I see way more commercials, whether it be on social media or just general TV. I see way more about the women's tournament than the men's. And I think that certainly plays a part in that record-breaking game, the Iowa LSU game.
Yeah, definitely. It's like we were talking about earlier, like hopefully they can just sustain that success at the next level and translate it. It'll be interesting to see what they do. You're right. If I'm a marketing executive for the WNBA, I am making sure that is like our number one priority to make sure those two are the face of our league. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they are able to capitalize on it, but hopefully they can bring that momentum forward because I don't think any of us want this to end. Like we want to keep watching whatever the next chapter might be.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see. And like we've all said, I hope it continues. We don't have a ton of time, but I do want to end this. We'll do the men's and we'll do the women's. We didn't talk a lot about the men's, but I don't have to hear predictions for each game. You can give them if you want, but who is going to win the national championship on each side? We can all go around the table.
So yeah, so I think this is the other part that makes the men's side not as captivating right now. It's kind of UConn's game to lose, right? Like they're so dominant. They look so much better. Again, like you said earlier, they look like they're playing a totally different game than a lot of these other teams. So I think it's theirs to lose. I know that's kind of not like a sexy or out of the box pick, but it kind of feels like that's where this is trending. So that would be my pick on the men's side. And their women could also win it, which would also be kind of wild to see both those teams win it. They really impressed me against USC. That was another really, really good women's basketball game and just generally a good basketball game. But UConn really impressed me in that too. It was really the first time I got to sit down and like watch an entire game against really, really a really good opponent. I mean, Juju from USC is insane. She's so talented.
Yeah.
So those would be my picks. So maybe they're not, out there, but those would be my picks.
Well, you'd be surprised to hear on the men's side that me and Alex did have NC State winning the championship. This is not a joke.
I like it because it's fun. Like it's fun.
I'm talking about before the tournament.
Yeah.
Before the tournament, we had NC State. We did a March Madness breakdown the Monday after the thing was released. And I told him about DJ Burns, who ran through the ACC tournament. And I said, I'm not betting against this big boy. Like it was kind of a joke. We were just having fun on a Monday, but now we're sitting here. He's in the Final Four. I got to ride with him, right? Like we're this close.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I had a few of we both have relatives that went to NC State. So I followed them closely throughout this tournament, fell in love with DJ Burns late in the season, and I have been riding with him. So I agree. Listen, UConn is on another level. They're playing a different game. I've never seen an NCAA men's basketball team this dominant in back-to-back tournaments in my life. So they're playing a different game. They're the obvious pick, but I'll go with the fun one with NC State. On the women's side, I'll go with the fun one too. Caitlin Clark, why don't we get it done? Like you got to end this special ride that you've all put us through with a championship. It just feels right. Sometimes sports feel like they're a movie. This would be movie like beating LSU on the way to the Final Four, beating UConn, the team that didn't recruit you, and then beating an undefeated South Carolina. That's how you cap off a women's career.
I'm going to go Dawn Staley, her team, I mean, they look unbeatable. They beat LSU twice. Watch both those regular season games. They look unbelievable. I do love the story of Caitlin Clark. I love that. But I'm going to go with Dawn Staley's Gamecocks. I think Alabama, if they just get hot, they play such a ridiculous brand of basketball that it feels like maybe they can make, 33s in a game and upset UConn and then ride that momentum in the championship. So I'll go Alabama and the Gamecocks.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way they can do it for Alabama is if they just make like a bunch of threes.
I
That's
mean,
the only way that it'll
it's
happen.
very possible. And I think, Purdue has obviously a chance to upset UConn as well. Edie is an absolute freak. But I just think that, at some point in time, Alabama is going to get over that hump. Nate Oates is going to get over that hump. What a better story than to do it to a juggernaut in UConn.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to see as an LSU fan is Alabama winning any sort of national championship in any sport. We have the women's basketball national championship. We're the only one, men or women, with the national championship in recent times. So I'd like to keep it that way. But I agree. Listen, if Alabama goes out there and scores 110 points, you got a chance to win the game. But it's going to be tough against UConn. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us again. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.